return guest here to demo and give his review on Wrath and Glory. We have Ven, Discord name Ventril, and we also have Eric, Discord name's Eric. Like, what is it, Eric? Eric G, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I'm very creative.
It's just next level stuff. And of course, I'm your host, Gordo. So we're doing our last podcast here before the 2-week break for the holidays and New Year's. So we're gonna kick it off with this Wrath and Glory. So Ven, we got our rule books out. We've pre-licked our fingers so we can flip through pages electronically.
Got my dice.
We got the click clack rocks. What's just real quick, dude, just give me like an overview comparative to the Fantasy Flight games. I know you've dabbled in Wrath and Glory a bit. How would you like? Is it like D&D 5e compared to the other D&D editions? Like, would you say Wrath and Glory would be a good place to start for people who have no idea how to play tabletop?
If they have no idea how to play tabletop, yeah, I think it would be an all right entrance into like the 40K setting and the games around it, because I feel like a lot of us, like myself and others, who have played like the 40K RPGs for many years, we are definitely biased towards the Fantasy Flight games for a good while, and I feel like the rocky launch of Wrath and Glory has definitely like colored our perception of it. Like many people, instead of calling it VNG, they call it Wang. Instead. Also to indicate the negatives of it. I feel like it's a bit unfair.
It's fun. It's fun to say Wang.
Sure, it's fun, but it's a slightly disrespectful, I guess. But now that after it's not in Ulysses Spiele, they don't have the license anymore. Now it's at Cubicle 7, and they have done like a pretty thorough revision of it, and have changed a lot of the rules. They have streamlined a bunch of the stuff that was actually rather confusing. And I feel like the Wrath and Glory that we have now, the Cubicle 7 one, is definitely better than the one that we got from Ulysses Spiele. Is it going to entry into 40K? Yes, I think so. At least for new people. But I feel like for a lot of the rest of us who has been playing the Fantasy Flight games for years, there's a lot of stuff lacking. There's a lot of variety lacking. But that can also come just from the fact that we have, 4 or 5 game systems that are like basically cross-compatible with each other in the Fantasy Flight systems.
I mean, they say they were, but sometimes they don't feel like it.
To a certain degree, sure. But like the basic framework and rules are there, and it is fairly cross-compatible.
So as far as variety goes, so does it have an overall setting? Like the Deathwatch book is about Deathwatch Space Marines, Rogue Traders about Rogue Traders, and so on and so forth. Only War is about playing as Guardsmen. Is there a set theme, or is it pretty much just Warhammer, Warhammer, Warhammer?
See that's where it differs from the Fantasy Flight games, where the Fantasy Flight games, they all had a focus. They all, like you said, either you play Guardsmen, you play Chaos, you play Rogue Traders, you play Inquisition or something.
Yeah.
Wrath and Glory kind of tries to be all-encompassing, which is both nice, but is also a problem in that it doesn't do it as well as the other games does. There's a lot, like, in that regard.
How encompassing? Like, I did see there was a faction list that had in my opinion, a lot of factions on there. Can you play as all those factions, or is that just lore that's listed in the rulebook?
Like the faction list is basically you can play as all those factions. Now,
wow.
Going a bit into the like character creation process as well is that one of the first steps that you do that the game asks you to do is that you in collaboration with your group should create a framework. Like, what is the focus of this campaign? Are we rogue traders? Are we like guardsmen, or are we just random scum in the Underhive or whatever? And based on that, you then select a tier. And there are 4 tiers that you choose from, each progressively like representing more powerful characters. So if you're tier 1, you'll play like fairly low power characters. You'll like standard Imperial Guardsmen, Inquisitorial Acolytes,
Oh, okay.
Gangers.
I can see the
whatnot.
stuff here. Yeah, Ganger, Orc Boy,
Yeah.
and stuff. Okay, so they even throw the other races in there too. So it's
They do. So like you like a basic Orc Boy, you'll have like a standard Eldar Corsair or Eldari, as we're supposed to say nowadays.
okay.
And then you have like tier 2. We go up a bit up. So like the Imperial Guard stuff would be like Tempestus Scions, Stormtroopers, Space Marine Scouts, Rogue Traders. Just a step up the ladder in terms of the power level of everybody that's there. Then tier 3, we go a step up further. We have the Tactical Space Marines. We're talking like Eldar Warlocks, Imperial Commissars, full-on Tech Priests, Orc Knobs, and so on. And with the 4th tier, we're then talking like you're an Inquisitor or you're a Primaris Space Marine. It's kind of deal.
I do love that they played up to that, saying that the primary was a
Again, some of the stuff lacks variety in that there's only the Tactical Space Marine or there's only the Primaris Interceptor. There's no like thing in between there. But what is also cool is that you can take people from, for example, tier 1, and you can ascend them to the next tiers. So, for example, if you're saying, okay, guys, we're going to play a tier 3 campaign, Imperial campaign, then somebody could be like, okay, I want to play a Space Marine, a Tactical Space Marine. Okay, cool. And other guys want, I don't want to play any of the tier 3 characters. I want to play a Imperial Guardsman who is just so badass that he is tier 3 now. And so there's like ascension packages where you like, okay, you get an amount of points you can spend for each tier. So again, character creation. Each tier has an assigned amount of XP that the characters have available. And so, for example, the tier archetypes, which is the Tactical Space Marine, that's an archetype that you buy, and that has a cost associated with it. So tier 1 will have like 100 XP to spend, or build points. Tier 3 will have like 300 build points to spend. Like, all right, fair. Now you can then take an Imperial Guardsman, and you can then buy an Ascension package for him, which then brings him up to tier 2, gives him a bunch of stuff, extra equipment, extra abilities, and so on and so forth. And so then you can buy another one to get him up to tier 3.
So that makes the leveling up process pretty much just straightforward. Like, you're not really doing much work. You're just taking the package and then moving on.
Just to an extent, like the package gets you up there, yes, but you also have extra stuff to spend on the rest of your character, like upgrading your attributes, upgrading your skills, and whatnot. Which
it looks to be less restrictive Rogue Trader career blocks, but it's definitely not as open as, like, say, Black Crusade.
Or only, or okay, I got you.
Yeah, it looks a little in the middle to.
Yeah, it's kind of its own thing, I'd say. The other thing is also that what I was going to say. You also get access to new equipment and everything. So once you So in the end, like your guardsman will be like super badass. For example, in our campaign that we ran the Dark Tides, the campaign setting that Ulysses Spiele did, which I'll get into later. But that thing has like, okay, the first mission that you do, you are tier 1. The second mission you do, you are tier 2. The third mission is tier 3, and so on. So it builds up over time. Now all the other players in my campaign, whenever we went up a tier, they made new characters, entirely new characters. I was the only one who played like the same character throughout all of them, as a Imperial Guardsman, from Krieg, which is just called Niner because that was like the last 3 digits of its designation. And so we started out like basic bitch guardsman, flag armor, last gun, nothing special there. Tier 2, he got like a hotshot last gun. Tier 3, he was like rocking a hotshot volley gun, in like full on carapace armor and like some implants and whatnot, and it got like pretty cool in that regard. That you feel like the bump up in power level there.
And then
Just shooting out hot death everywhere.
I feel like it's just. I feel like it's every campaign's just going to boil down to basically a Dark Heresy game, because I mean, yeah. Otherwise, if you have people who are like, I want to be a guardsman, I want to be a Scutari, I want to be this, I want to be that. It's like, how do you make your campaign make sense?
I mean, again, that's what I talked about with the framework.
Yeah.
Like you say, okay, like, because there's basically like a Assistant Zero agreement that you're doing. Okay, we got like the framework of the campaign is going to be Imperial Guard at the front line. Okay, so we all play like Imperial guardsmen within that framework.
Or Imperials, yeah. I mean, because you can still, Space Marine wouldn't be the end of the world, nor a Scutari, but yeah, it's like you get those people who want to be an orc when everybody else wants to be a guardsman.
I mean, the way I see it, it's more of you're not presented with templates. It's really kind of the way I see all these are presented with templates, and you get the opportunity.
Very much so, yeah.
The very system is much more of but it's plug and play, meaning that you decide, okay, we're running a guardsman campaign. Cool, everybody, guardsman, and here's your templates. You play whatever. Very restrictive to, hey guys, we're doing a more rogue trader style campaign where we can have Eldar, we can have orcs, or Dark Heresy where you can have Eldar, you can have orcs, because some of them.
And
it allows for a lot.
It basically it all goes down to is like, what game do you want to play? Here are the options if you want to do that. Like that. That's all it says essentially.
It doesn't have. Maybe we'll talk about this later, but I don't want to talk about just what it does have, but what it doesn't have, because, like you said, with the FFG system, a lot of them have a lot of experience with FFG when it comes to any kind of 40K tabletop. It's not a version itself. We're used to some significant depth. What it doesn't have in campaign play that some people might miss from things like Rogue Trader is empire building, power-based building.
Yeah,
do they have that in Wrath and Glory?
No, they do not.
Yeah, they do not.
There's nothing like that. There's not.
Which is fine. I mean, not to say that there needs, but
again, we got to remember, Fantasy Flight Games, a series of games that's been coming out over like a decade. Wrath and Glory, we literally have the first book, like the first like splat book with additional content has only just been announced, and it's coming out like in a couple of months. Like let's give them the benefit of the doubt and just like,
absolutely.
We only have one book at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
More stuff can be added on.
But I kind of want to make the point across is that while it is plug and play, you can decide virtually any kind of you want to play. There isn't quite yet. We'll hopefully get that soon, or at least some future, for deeper, crunchy, more expanded universe type stuff. If you will allow me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I fully believe is in. I do expect that to happen because it has to go somewhere. Is that logical?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm still hung up on the fact that you said it was a D6 system, right?
It is. It's a D6 pool.
Yep.
So how generally rolls work is so you have an attribute, let's say agility. So if you so let's just say if you're
Well,
making a
walk us
shooting.
through shooting. Yeah, walk us
Yeah,
through shooting
let's
somebody.
say, okay, so let's say that my character Nina wants to shoot somebody. So
Okay.
As you do.
as he does, he's a guardsman. That's what he does. So he basically like takes his agility score, which would be let's just say 6, because this is towards the end of the tier 3. So his agility score is 6, and his ballistic skill is 6. That makes for a total of 12 dice for me to roll. Now, in order to like get successes, I need to roll a 5 or a 6. A 5 indicates an icon. A 6 indicates an exalted icon, and that essentially means that it counts as two successes for
Yeah.
that. So
These dice work on a different system than your D100s 20s,
Yeah.
correct?
yeah,
These very much on the event dice.
kind of. I would compare it more to games like Shadowrun, because that's the same, except that you roll successes on a 4 up instead of a 5 up. But it's essentially the same thing in that you create your dice pool, and then you roll it, see how many successes you are, and see if you hit the DN, the difficulty number that you have to hit. So, for example, I'm shooting this heretic. His defense trait is 3, which means that I need 3 successes in order to hit. So let's say I roll the dice. I have 2 icons and I have 4 exalted icons for a total of 10 successes in total. That's not out of the ordinary. I actually rolled it previously and wrote them down. So that's a legit roll. So in order to actually hit him, I commit 2 of the icons and 1 exalted icon, because I can't really separate them, and there's a reason why. So once I've hit him, I have 3 exalted icons to spare beyond that. I can then shift them into extra damage on my last gun, for example. So the more exalted icons I do, the more damage I do to the person that I'm shooting. So the last gun would be it would do 7 damage. Its stat line is 7 plus 1 ED, which is extra dice. I would then roll 3, because of my exalted icons that I have 3 to spare. I roll 3 additional damage dice, so it would be 7 plus 4 ED that I would roll. And now each of those damage dice also succeeds on a 5 and a 6, which does corresponding damage. So a 5 up is plus 1 damage, a 6 is plus 2 damage. So let's say those dice roll 2 6s, a 3, and a 5. That would mean that I would do damage equal to 7 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. That's 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
For those of us like myself who are a dial, just people who don't quite usually aren't used to D6 systems like this.
Mhm.
More or less, what it breaks down to is you have a skill number, 2 of them that you put together that correspond to a dice pool.
Yes.
Then you have a target number, difficulty must hit, and then beyond that, critical success, you get extra effects. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
So yeah, just breaking that down a little bit for
That's
people like myself that
Vampire the
kind of-
Masquerade.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, Vampire the Masquerade did that, but with D10s.
Yeah.
fancy.
And
Yeah, that
the thing is
was-
also
It's not
outside
bad,
of combat. If
just
so,
throw so
outside
many
of
dice.
combat, it's also that you can shift those. So if you're just rolling a regular test on something, if you then have additional exalted icons to spare, you can then also shift them over into like, oh, I want to do this task faster, or I want to do this task safer, or I want to get more information out of this task or whatever, so that you have more to play with in that regard.
Yeah. One of the things I found interesting about the system that reminds me of a couple other systems is the Wrath and Glory dice pool, point pool, if you prefer. I found that an interesting mechanic that I've seen a couple of times done it a few different ways. You want to go into a little bit about how that worked?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch the first part.
Oh, I apologize. One of the things I found very interesting was the Wrath and Glory mechanic itself. Yeah.
Yeah, the meta currency kind of, yeah.
Yes.
So at the start of each session, all your characters have start with 2 wrath die. Two wrath, points of wrath.
Okay.
And these can be used to either the wrath dice are good.
Oh, they're
so
good.
There's three. Yeah. So wrath dice are the really good ones. They you use them to either reroll dice. You can declare something about the narrative. So, for example, if you really need a flame fire extinguisher to be somewhere, you can spend a wrath point and say there's a fire extinguisher in the corner if the GM allows it, of course. Or you can use it to restore shock, which is one of the damage pools that you have essentially on yourself. And those only regenerate at the start of each session, and you have 2 of them. You can have more through gameplay and stuff, but what you usually will use is glory. Now, glory is a meta currency that the entire team has, so that is shared across the entire PC team. So whenever you roll, so one of the dice that you roll whenever you roll a test is like a different dice than the rest of the dice that you use, and that's called the wrath dice. So if you roll a 6 on that, you roll a glory. So the team adds a glory to the common pool that they have. If you roll a 1, you roll a complication, and then bad shit happens. Like your gun jams, or you run out of ammo, or the GM just gets a point of ruin, which is the last meta
which is the antithesis of all the good things that happen in the world, all coming down, crashing upon you, sad puppy.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the GM can use the ruin meta currency to like cause something bad to happen. Some enemies will have like special things that they can do if the GM spends a point of ruin to do it. He can also, if he wants to, like call in reinforcements to the scene, if he wants to, depending on what's like appropriate for the scenario in question. Now, going back to glory, then that can be used to add dice to a single roll. You can add damage to a hit. There are some critical hits where you can add severity. So you have the same concept as of mortal wounds in this game as you do in Warhammer nowadays.
Okay.
And you can there's some critical hits where you do like mortal wounds, and then you can spend glory to increase the amount of mortal wounds that the enemy suffer, or you can cease initiative, which is also different from initiative. Works differently than in the other 40k RPGs, in that you don't actually have initiative dice. It just goes on turn. So the PCs will always start, and then the enemy will go. And the PCs pick whoever among them they feel should go right now. And then the enemy goes, then the next PC goes, then the enemy goes, and then the next PC goes, and round we go. And you can kind of skip by seizing initiative. You can like say, "Oh, the enemy doesn't get their turn right now. Right now, I do." So you
by
could
spending
have
a glory die.
By spending a glory, yeah. So you could potentially have like 3 like PCs go in rapid succession. Of course, then the NPCs would like also go in rapid succession afterwards or whatever.
So, what's the like wound count and like damage output for weapons? Like, what's that looking at? Like in Fantasy Flight games, a Space Marine has on average like 20 to 24 wounds, and a Bolter does a D10 plus 9. What's it going on in like Wrath and Glory? Like what are people averaging for like wounds and such?
I feel like most people are like the thing that determines your wounds is your tier, actually. And then who you are. So if you're first tier, you have lower wound count. If you're higher tier, you have more wound count. I think it's similar with shock, which is the other thing that you have. So if you, for example, what's it called? You take a hit, and it goes through your armor and everything. Then you can you can roll that what's called determination. So you have an amount. You have a small dice pool that's determined by some of your other stats, which I can't quite remember at the moment. But that's your determination pool, and you roll that, and then for each success you have on the pool, or like on those dice, you shift the damage that took away from wounds and into shock. So you you're not actually like mortally wounded. You're like you take it on the chest, I guess, and go back in the fight. But you can only do that so many times, because once your shock is filled up, then you then you become exhausted and you get a bunch of penalties.
Does their exhaustion and stuff different from fatigue? Like, fatigue in the Fantasy Flight games, it's like you get a -10 to all tests, and that's it. Like, until you get to the maximum of fatigue and you end up passing out and or dying, additional fatigue actually doesn't do anything worse to you.
There's no cumulative effect until you hit your max.
Yeah, do they have that in that?
Somewhat. They have different conditions. So, for example, exhausted just means that let's see, I just found it here. So you can, on your turn, you can only walk or crawl and perform a basic combat action. So you can't really, you're limited in what you can do, and you cannot roll determination, which means that you can no longer convert the wounds that you take into shock. It all goes into mortal wounds, which is terrible. And in terms of the other stuff, there's not that many what's it called conditions as in the other games. So there's a pretty decent critical hit table, I guess, though not to the same degree as in the other games.
I did take a look at that, and I was, because like basically, in the FFG ones you have ones for different types of damage and location. In this one, it's got table, and it's just, but it's very similar. I read through it, was like you can definitely tell where they pulled previous resources, of course, to draw people in, get them interested, and also a bit of familiarity, but also add some new flavor, especially the way I saw that critical effects. You can push with glory, for instance, put extra wounds or extra status. I thought that was an doing. I prefer, personally, I like lots of tables, lots of options. A lot of crazy things happen, but I appreciate that if they were going to condense it, they were going to give you the opportunity to push things with that extra resource.
It's definitely there, and it's also similar in terms of like when we're talking psychic powers, and I don't think you used glory for that. But there is definitely also the good old Perils of the Warp table is still there. So
love it.
That's good.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, you gotta have perils, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
fuck the witch. I don't care.
Look, if you're not turning inside out and sucked into or 99 plus, I won't play it.
Yeah.
Play your game.
I mean, then that's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, most of the psychers I run into now, it's for my campaigns. They just, they build them for their job. So it's like they don't perils too often. Doesn't really happen. Most people don't push. I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, most of my goal is just to get you to a life-threatening moment to the point where you think you have to push, or you're gonna die.
Right.
But
If you
with the Wrath and
this
Glory,
is
what's the support? Like, do they expand into vehicles? Like, do they give the support and stuff for that? Because, some of the games for Fantasy Flight games had already built-in support for that, but some didn't. Some
there
you couldn't.
there was vehicle. I know that there was vehicles and like basic starship rules in the Ulysses Spieler version of the game. They took that out in the Cubicle 7. I feel like because it wasn't very developed and
nope.
it just didn't make sense for it to really be there when there's no rules for like building starships. There's no rules, like it was just like half-assed really, and so they took that out. I feel like that's probably going to make a reappearance later on. I don't know if it's going to be in what's it called, Forgotten Worlds. I think it's the next one coming out here. But or Forgotten System. I think it's Forgotten System.
Wow, that's a little on the say.
Well,
I mean, 40K can be on the nose a couple times, or a lot of times.
So, do they have anything for vehicles like tanks, cars, like anything?
No,
not in this.
Not at the moment. Not in the current one. But I don't feel like that's the like important part. Like if you're going to do a new system, like focus on the core rules and make those good, and then you can start expanding them. And I feel like that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah, it
with this one
does seem to me that it was not something they forgot to do. They actively chose.
Okay, so they
maybe as a response to this spiel.
I mean, they actively took the like vehicle and starship like sections that were in the previous version and took those out. So yeah,
the Cubicle 7 release is very, to me at least, reads like, look, this is the first talking. What are you talking about? First Wrath and Glory edition that didn't happen. What are you talking? This is the first Wrath and Glory edition. I mean, obviously, it's not a complete, total, and 100% overhaul, but it reads to me very much so like, look at that, pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, like that the Ulysses Spieler book was a mess, both I feel somewhat mechanically, but also just formatting wise, like things being where they weren't supposed to be, like just confusing with finding things, like the Death Watch core rule book and trying to make a character in there. That is
god, any FF.
I don't feel like any FFG. Just but the Death Watch one is really horrendous because
it is. Yeah.
None of the things are where you expect them to be.
The only war book.
Oh yeah, you're talking about like navigating through the pages to find what you're.
Yeah, exactly. The format, how it's structured and everything. Yeah,
it's totally half-assed, backwards, and confusing. Yeah, but yeah, because it's funny because like fundamentally, like their character creation is good, but it's almost like they didn't know how to put it in a book. Like
they didn't.
Yeah, it's like
they
totally didn't.
Stuff
and they had all the practice in the world to do it.
They'd have rules for one thing in one way in one book, then it'd change to the next book, then they'd forget they changed it, and it would flip flop. Like Mighty Shot changes like 3 or 4 different times. Goes from being a flat +2 to being half your ballistic skill to back to a +2. Like it's something stupid, but it floats around.
I mean, if we're going to sit here and talk about FFG's consistency, we will be here for days.
Yeah, but it's so at the end of the day, Ven, with your thoughts on Wrath and Glory, with character creation and everything, if you know the Fantasy Flight games, is it worth to get into Wrath and Glory?
It's a really rough question. Like,
is it going to give me anything that I can't already do or homebrew in another game?
Oh no! Like if you put it like that, no, it's not gonna give you anything new, because like all the other systems are so much more evolved and developed, because they have so many years and additional books to build on. Like the book's not going to give you anything new, but I feel like it's going to be it's a good entry point for somebody who doesn't play the FFG and who is kind of new to 40K.
I understand what you're saying with the extensive amount of books and such like that. So let's boil it down to even just. Well, no, Dark Heresy 2. That's the newest one. Dark Heresy 2 versus Wrath and Glory. You can play the same campaigns in each one easily.
Hmm.
Does Wrath and Glory bring to the table everything it needs to go against Dark Heresy, or is it? Would you just push people to Dark Heresy?
If it's just Dark Heresy, I would still do Dark Heresy because in that case it's for the focus. It's the fact that Dark Heresy um, basically says we are presenting uh, this book basically presents how to play Inquisition in the 40k universe, where Wrath and Glory tries to do everything and doesn't really cater to any one. So if we're going on that, I would prefer Dark Heresy because you have investigation mechanics, you have a bunch of more lore around that and appropriate level appropriate like you could still do all these things in Wrath and Glory. I just think you have more supporting mechanics in Dark Heresy for what Dark Heresy wants to do. And again, that's the thing where I say I prefer the Finance Flight games because they have a focus, and Wrath and Glory tries to do everything.
Also, like I said previously, it's still that plug and play where you just give a template, and without the hopefully coming sort of expansions on it, like you said with vehicle tools, and like I said earlier, where it expands out into empire building things like that, about building planets and building stations and stuff. Like, hopefully that will be coming, but those are things we already have with other systems. So to compare the two, I would say is unfair, simply because one has a lot more history behind it and a lot more work already gone into it, and the other one, newer system, a different dice system, and is trying to draw in new people.
Yeah,
there's a reason why it's set. We should probably say that the lore in Wrath and Glory is set post Cadia.
Yeah.
This is post the Eye of Terror LORP.
Yeah, because you got Primaris in there, man. They got Primaris.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is supposed to be set, and it does deal with a lot of the lore. Say a lot, but a amount of the lore, shall we say, of what happened on post Indomitus Crusade. So it is meant to draw in those new people who may have just heard about this, who may be interested in playing in the new galaxy, if you will.
I mean,
and also to ping in the people who've been playing for a while. Hey, still come in here and play an Inquisitor. You can still come in here and play your Space Marines and Death Cult Assassins.
Yeah.
It's just going to take time. It's going to take time for that depth to really grow.
Yeah, I feel like there's a solid framework here. It just needs to be developed.
They should have focused more. They should have focused more. Had it be to where you can play as guardsmen, you can play as Space Marines, and then give maybe a couple other races so you can have your good and bad people run campaigns through the book. And then you have your expansions, man. I mean, Games Workshop gargles and loves expansions. They just love drowning in expansions and updates and all these little other rule books that you have to buy with it. I don't know why they didn't do that for Wrath and Glory.
I mean, we got to remember
traders.
We got to remember that it's not Games Workshop who are doing these. It's Cubicle 7, and they're a much smaller company, and they don't have they have the license, yes, but I'm not sure how much financial backing they have from Games Workshop. More likely, they pay Games Workshop for the license, if anything.
Oh, they have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing: they actually bought it from Lissy.
Yeah,
who bought it from, I think, Black Library Publishing.
Then you give it back to Fantasy Flight Games.
No, they lost the license. They straight up lost it.
Yeah, they lost the license, but I also feel like that's because they became a competitor to Games Workshop, directly with
because of the Star Wars stuff and all that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just makes sense to me because they're in active competition with Game Workshop.
Well, I mean, considering that FFG closed down their RPG wing completely this year or last year, I don't know that it's so much that they became competitors.
I don't think They don't close it down. They shifted it to a sister company, I think.
Yeah, so they outsource. It's gone off of that. All they do now, as far as I understand, is like mobile. That's FFG. Kind of sold off some assets, I know, and they lost some of their licenses. They lost Star Wars 40K. I know they had another one, but I can't for the life of me. I'm not a historian, obviously, but yeah, they've had some rough. I think, at least from the outside, it looks like they've had a rough go of it these past couple of years.
Mm.
But I absolutely agree with Ben here about this. This is very much so is a core system. Liken it to D&D 5th edition. It is meant to draw in people with a new system, relatively speaking, that's boiled down to your basic components and gives you just a smattering of stuff that you can play at. It gives all this, you got Sisters Hospitalier in Tier 1 all the way up to Primaris Intercessors in Tier 4. It's meant to give you lots of options to spark the imagination, a lot of opportunity, and lots of skills, talents, but it lacks the later crunch that makes them actual different, meaningful way. But that, I believe, will be forthcoming, like we saw in any of the other FFG games. Base Dark Heresy, first edition, wow, just crazy, kind of broken, a little shallow in actual depth. Obviously, goes without saying. All the way up to Dark Heresy 2, which was, holy Jesus, it's big, flat, but bigger. We have Ascension. We have all this crazy stuff. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of interest. And I think Wang is getting that interest. It's coming about.
I mean,
so it should happen.
Definitely. Like I'm kind of looking through the Cubicle 7 news here, just to make sure, and I definitely can see that in the Forsaken system, the next upcoming thing, they're going to add more worlds to build up the setting. There's at least the I don't know, the librarian for the Astartes stuff. There's some others, different worlds and more archetypes for you to play as. The only criticism I have about the system, like the setting that it's set in, is that it's supposed to be on the other side, like on one of the edges that connects with Imperial Sanctus. So it's basically like a cutoff system on the other side. Basically on the other side of what's that goddamn world that they're fighting over right now?
Vigilus?
Vigilus, yeah. Essentially on the other side of Vigilus. So Vigilus is on the Imperium Sanctus side. The system that this is in, the Gilead system, is on the Imperial Nihilist side.
Yeah.
And the only criticism I really have is that goddamn system has every conceivable world inside its own border. Like it's a single system, and it has like Forge World, Agri World, Hive World, Night World, and all this stuff. It's like you could spread it out a bit more, but I also kind of understand why you need to keep it in one system, because you can't really travel outside either.
That is part of the problem about creating a game of Fishbowl, is that you've got to have all the fish in that bowl, or else it's not gonna really work.
Yeah.
And of course, then you're stretching even the suspension of disbelief that 40K players should have. It does. It does smack a bit of lack of forethought. Sort of what FFG did
to a certain extent, but there are like systems in the 40K lore where you can have all those.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's 40K. You can have anything anywhere at any time. I mean, it's all free game.
Exactly.
But at the same time, good writing, it is not. And perhaps it is just, again, another sort of representation of the lack of that depth, that they really couldn't do ships yet. We really could do a lot of vehicles, big scale stuff. So let's just shove everything close together as we possibly can. Make it all very interesting, and it's all very neat and unique and everything like that. But let's put it very, very close together, because we really don't want to have to make the rules about how they get from B. We just say, oh, well, you get there.
Yeah.
Cool. How? Yeah. But you get there. Okay, but how? Will you get there?
I mean, you could just pull that from Fantasy Flight Games. I mean, they explain time narratives and like how you should do long distance
I mean,
traveling.
it's not so
and
much that. It's more the fact that they can't have anything out of system because the Astronomicon isn't there. They
Yeah.
can't really space travel.
They kind of
That's the
they
problem.
wrote themselves into a corner. In terms of that sort of thing. It's the thing is that I don't know if they talk about this in the book because again, I haven't done this deep of a dive that has. I haven't played it yet. Only speak to what I've seen so far. Is it really pushes hard the narrative of isolation, right? It really
Yeah.
pushes hard that sort of thing. But in the 40K lore, we do have things shallow warp. So ships that don't have navigator transition the warp for short jumps. It's a very long time, and it's just very dangerous. You generally don't want to do it because navigators are not a dime a dozen, very very rare, and you don't have anyone else that can look for the Astronomicon. So there are ways that you can. Now, obviously, with the Cicatrix Maledictum having exploded, that would be very very difficult and stuff. But to write a system that is snow globe, you have to have the framework in place to allow for a lot of exploration within said system. If you're not going to allow them to get out, not really, you need to have a whole bunch of stuff in there that's really interesting and a lot of ways for them to interact.
Gotta put Castle in
And you
that
also
fish
can't.
tank.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It is interesting. And the fact that it puts everything does allow you to play anything you want, really. With the exception, of course, because the only two aliens you get option to, I'm sorry, Xenos you get option in the base book, of course, is the Eldar Orc, which fine, who wants to play as a Tyranid? Me do. Hi, go fans.
I mean, you could do a Gene Stealer cult, or you could do I feel like a campaign with Gene Stealers wouldn't be horrendous. I mean, you wouldn't be RPing much. It would be a lot of just talking out of character to say, I interpret his, thoughts like this.
Not so much, actually. It's interesting because I saw it was rather good is that you play as Yumgarl. And your Yumgarl that have been that have been disconnected from the hive mind because the hive mind doesn't want to reabsorb you because you've got all these
I was
basically
talking
bad
about
traits.
playing as specifically a Gene Stealer. Like, there's no verbal
Well,
communication.
that is included in that.
Yeah.
Gene Stealers are also part of that whole strain, and then they have much more a lot more sapience and individual sentience than your average, Hormigan, which is overridden and
Yeah.
such. So that, I mean, again, when you asked earlier, like how does it stack against? It's kind of an unfair question because homebrew is a broad description of whatever you want. It's every flavor of the ice cream, but it's based off of the cone. This is that cone. So we're getting the homebrew. I've seen some posts for Wrath and Glory homebrew. I haven't taken a look at it.
There's I've looked a bit of it. I have the Abundance of Apocrypha from Oro Discordia, and that's like a whole bunch of new archetypes that you can play. Like all the Primaris Marines are here, like Hellblaster, Inceptor, Incursors, Infiltrators, etc. They added a new tier, so there's a 5th level tier for all the like assassin characters. So Eversor Assassin, you can do that. You wanna play a Farseer, you can do that. Stuff like that.
I found that interesting. Sorry to interrupt you here, but
Yeah.
I did find that one thing very interesting. Is that I guess it would be actually a tier 4 or actually tier 5 sort of archetype. There are no assassins in the Wrath and Glory core book. I get it. I'm guessing probably with like Dark Heresy it was way off later. Obviously, Grey Knights and that sort of it's way top tier, over the top stuff.
There's the Death Cult Assassin.
There is a Death Cult Assassin, but there's no actual assassin. Found that interesting. I mean, because they've pushed the assassin a little bit recently, even before this came out with the whole kill team. Not kill team. Officio Assassinorum, their special tabletop game they made.
The Execution Squad. That was like
I
feel like that was like 2 years before this was even announced.
But they've been pushing a little bit with the short stories that were coming out. I feel like they're probably going to come a couple new models as well, but that's just my stuff. I was surprised that they didn't capitalize something that cool. The Eversor is cool. The Vindicare is cool, and so on. I was surprised they didn't try to include that in any real way.
Mm.
I mean, we get Primaris, obviously, which are they're the
what Space Marine should
poster
have
children.
been.
Well, they're the poster children, and all that stuff. So I found it interesting. I was a little disappointed I didn't see that. I expected it to come, but I was a little disappointed that I didn't see actual Officio Assassinorum stuff. Would have been.
I think if
I don't know, like
I just with the way it stands now, I don't find anything worth it for me to delve into it because just using Only War, I can create great campaigns with the homebrew that I have and the homebrew that I do. So it's like I don't see a reason to switch to using D6s and learning that system. But I mean, they have. If you're gonna make something new, you got to make it, just like D&D. You got to make it accessible so new players can pick it up and just play it. And then at the same time, you'll also have to have something in there to entice old players to try it. If they released an RPG that was set during the Horus Heresy, or one that had like a side campaign, like one that had a module, like the ones that are in like Deathwatch and Only War, they give you little mini campaigns. D&D has them.
I mean
It's
that's basically what Dark Tides was.
If they had one for like the Thunder Warriors, they need shit in there to entice old players. It's like, hey, here's this new RPG. You can play as like a few different Imperial agents and blah blah blah. And then it's like, hey, there's a module in there that takes place during the Horus Heresy. Hey, there's a module in there that takes place, during the fall of Cadia. Something that gives older players a reason to be like, you know what, let me pick this up and let's, run through this with some friends and see how they like it or something. Like, something like that. If they had the storming of the bridge for Horus Heresy on there, and they let a few people play as like, some of the Primarchs and shit, I'd been like, let's go, fam. Or are you playing as the White Scars repelling the landings on like fucking Terra? Yeah, let's go. I was like, I would pick up that book just for that. I would run it for
riding their jet bikes off the top of the wall.
Exactly. I don't fucking care. And then you got one ballsy friend who's like, I want to be a human. Fuck it. Let's go, man.
I want to be a grease stain. I
want to be a human. All right, well, make 3.
He died.
That speaks more to your GM's creativity.
He plays a human. He dies from the shockwave of the gun that's firing on the tower.
Yeah, yeah, just firing, hitting the percussion. Absolutely, you're toast. That sort of thing. Those, I would call them specialist eras, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not that hard.
Like, I mean, I definitely
do it as a module, man. Like, throw it in the book. Like, it's like
those would require their mechanics. I feel because things were different.
So, well, the thing is like you build the module right. So, like, as far as it goes with storming Horus's bridge, you really only have to make some stat lines for a few Primarchs. And that's about it. Like, really, as far as like different weaponry, you don't have to get too fancy.
I'll be honest. I just don't feel like Primarchs should be statted.
No, I agree.
They are a force of nature, and they shouldn't have hit points. They should just be like, you face a Primarch, you either run or you die, and there's nothing in between.
I don't think Games Workshop would allow them to stat.
I mean,
they're okay with them dying on tabletop.
Say that, but then then they have a rules on tabletop.
But they're not okay with it. Storyline, what it is, it's a storyline. No matter how just dice rolling, pure combat it is. There's considering how your dudes 40k is your dudes. I don't think they really want to give that kind of control over to random players. I won't lie to you.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to stat them. I guess they can just put them in there. Because really, I don't know how you'd be able to let a player, because it's not like every player could be a Primarch. There weren't like 6 Primarchs storming the bridge. I think it was just like the Blood Angels Primarch, the Emperor, and was there like 2 others? There's like 5 in total, including Horus, that were on that ship. I think.
Sanguinius.
Sanguinius, Dawn, probably
Sanguinius got there
Khan
first and died. Yeah, so it was 5 in total, and that's including the Emperor and Horus. So there's
the only one who got to the bridge was Sanguinius. That was it, and then Dorn got there after the fact.
Yeah, Sanguinius got there and got killed, and then Dorn, and then the Emperor showed up.
The Khan was sort of like kind of stuck in the bowels of fighting.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, that could.
Yeah, I think the best module for that would be repelling the landings and siege on Terra, like just some just horrible combat.
Oh, the siege of Terra would be. First of all, it'd be a horrid mess of a system. Try to big.
I mean, they could break it down to like some of the fights that were in the hallways.
Yeah,
maybe.
It would be an immense amount of to do to see every player table. That would be.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be interesting. It's like you could literally build the module to where it's like, they could literally just have a script for the GM where it's like, read this before you start playing, and it's like, literally
20 pages long.
I mean, they don't. Yeah, you could do like 2 or 3 pages, like just describing the scene that is about to unfold. The module starts maybe like an hour before the siege actually happens, and then it just goes downhill from there. And it's just it's like you don't have to. The players don't have to survive. It just keeps going whether they're alive or not.
Well, Gordo, it sounds like a great module that you're. It sounds great. I look forward to it.
I mean, I could, but I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like a great module you should write. Yeah.
I'm gonna release
you start out. Okay, we're gonna start 1 hour before the heresy, or like the end of the system, and then you put on the audiobook of the Solar War, and then
so 10 hours later you come back.
It's the 10 years or so of me GMing. Is that like I can get an idea and I can crank it out real quick, but I always try not to let my brain run too wild, because it's like I don't have the time to do any of that stuff. So it's like I have one campaign right now, and it's like I focus on it because it's like I don't have time to prep and make stuff for another campaign.
Right.
Otherwise, I would want to, because it's like I have thoughts all the time. I was like, there's like moments where I'm like, well, what if you could play as like a Kroot hunting pack, and you got to hunt down these like neophytes for like the Black Templar or something, or even like a different, like you find this scout sergeant and his trainees, and you decide to cut them off and start hunting them down as Kroot. I was like, that'd be an interesting campaign right there in of itself. Or
the Kroot are criminally underrepresented.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm like, that'd be so interesting, man. It's like, because that's a different perspective. It's like, because you know what? Fucking one scout sergeant and 2 Space Marine scouts, they would be shitting their britches real quick if they were getting hunted down by like 20 Kroot. They'd have to figure out their stuff real quick.
It depends on who's writing at the given point in time.
I mean, it's just, well, I mean, that's, well, I guess it would depend on the terrain. Because to be honest, if the terrain is favorable to the Kroot, like dense jungles maybe, or like forests, I feel like the Space Marines would be scared. Well, I mean,
they shall know no fear.
They'd be worried, but I don't know if they'd be scared, get concerned. But if it was like Kroot versus Space Wolves on like Fenris, the Space Wolves wouldn't care. They would just hide in a cave and let the Kroot freeze to death.
Oh no, they would go out and hunt them just because. How dare they upon glory?
Yeah, I don't think the
Fenris
would fare in like freezing cold temperatures either.
I don't know, really. They're the ultimate adapter.
Yeah, they'd probably find some creatures, kill them, eat them, then adapt.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not like
maybe.
the next day. They're kind of that is one thing I will say about that a run over when it comes to enemies' abilities and uniqueness. Maybe that's why the left the only two things interesting is their weird look and whole adaptability.
Crits have beaks.
Oh, that is true. I will concede this point.
They got bird beaks.
So do Tyranid.
Yeah, some of the
Some of them.
Tyranids do. Yeah, some got teeth.
Well,
Yeah, Tyranids are weird. Some got like teeth. Some have beaks. Some have tentacle mouths, like Cthulhu. They are weird. But
You know what? You know what? Actually, this made me realize the greatest injustice Wrathing brought up. It didn't put any Demiurge or Zotes in there. I think we all can sit here angry about that fact. We don't have any Demiurge or Zotes.
wait, are there Ogren in Wrath of Glory?
No,
No.
no Ratlings either.
They are in the homebrew.
In the homebrew, there's anything,
but
but
not true. But yeah, they're not the core in the core rules. No.
no squats. No squats either.
Well, boys, we have reached that magical time of 9:01, which is the time to stop the Potamacast. So I just want to thank you guys. Ven, thanks for popping by and talking about Wrath and Glory.
Yeah.
Maybe
No,
we'll get
no
you
worries.
on.
I hope it.
Yeah, maybe we'll get you on next time
Yeah,
and
I hope it.
do some characters or something. Who the hell knows? Maybe we'll try it.
Sure.
You sound so excited.
I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about it. I just
I've played it, and I'm not sure how to feel about it.
I don't know.
To be
Just
honest.
you're
Like
something days.
It's just yeah. I'm just like I'm just like and it's like that's the thing though. It's like I can't say Fantasy Flight Games made a perfect system because it didn't. It's like it's not good. It's just what I had at the time.
I feel like I feel like it's just the system we're used to.
Yeah,
We're used to the freedom. Well, I say freedom, the restricted freedom that it.
yeah, but them doing the whole theme and stuff like Death Watch only wore Black Crusade. Like they're having a theme for the rule book made sense. It took a lot of guesswork out of what are we gonna play and stuff. It's like it's pretty straightforward. But yep, thanks again, Vin, Eric, thanks for popping in.
A pleasure.
So we're gonna call it there and pop in for our next podcast. Going to be on the 8th because we're going to take them 2 weeks to enjoy Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever thing you guys celebrate, New Year's and all that. I think everybody does New Year's.
Sanguinella / Slanesh.
There you go. Or that one weird holiday where you bake cornbread and then step on it. I don't judge. Do your own thing.
I'm Southern and I've never heard of that.
That's a thing. I call it a hoot nanny.
I'm European. I don't know.
But yep. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and thanks for being on, guys. So we'll catch you next time. What's up?
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.